Ooh, hello and welcome to the Awoken podcast. My name is Laura Carillo. I'm the Awoken CEO, and joining me today is Susie Beiler. She is one of our hosts on Awoken TV. She hosts 3 shows and one course. The Sedona Woo and Taboo show, which I love. It's my favorite one of her shows. The Way of Spiritual Mastery, and Messages from the Blue Dragons, as well as a course called Empath to Integration. Um, Susie has been with me on this journey since the very beginning, and I'm really excited for her to be my first interview on the podcast. Welcome, Susie. Um, Also, this podcast is not only here to showcase our amazing hosts, contributors, conscious filmmakers, light workers, blah, 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 but also to share our awakening stories. So today, Susie's going to talk to us about her awakening story, and we're going to have just like a fun dialogue about this. Like, we've both been going through it, and we were starting to talk like off camera. We weren't going to do the podcast. I'm like, let's just talk. Let's just talk. I want to hear your story. I want to hear it fresh. Let's do this. Let's turn on the camera and forget about the camera. So welcome, Susie. And
Laura.
you were starting to tell me some things about your journey, and please share with us.
Yeah, well, should I start with my story of spiritual awakening, or where would be the most juicy place to dive in?
It's funny you mentioned Juicy because I've been watching a podcast called Juicy Scoop, and it's, I don't know. So we're going to be spilling the spiritual
Real.
tea. This is a spiritual tea on here, but I think first, you know, your personal story of awakening, what your origin story is I think let's start there, and then we can kind of talk about more recent events and take it from there.
Okay, beautiful. So I was a pediatric occupational therapist, and I worked in early intervention, which means I trained parents how to work with their fragile children. And I began to just get really fatigued, and I didn't listen to my body, and I pushed myself. So then I developed a severe herniated disc in my lower back. And I finally found this practitioner who specialized in chronic fatigue syndrome. And sure enough, I ended up getting that diagnosis, and I wound up, long story short, wound up on an acupuncture table. And I simultaneously, when I started acupuncture, I also started going to nutrition school.
Okay.
I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition. And in that experience of going to nutrition school, I ran into a woman that I had stayed at a clinic with, because I was like in such bad shape. I literally ended up staying at a clinic for 3 months.
How
And
old
she
were
was
you?
one of the people. I was 20, well, I was in my early 20s when I was at the clinic.
Okay.
Yeah. And then I kind of started to get better, and that's why it's a long story short. So
Okay.
so this woman comes up to me in nutrition school, and she looks into my eyes, and she said, "You don't have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore." And I just looked at her, and I was like, huh, okay. And I didn't believe her, and I didn't not believe her. I was just sort of like, well, that's an interesting thing to say to somebody.
Right. How does
Because
she know?
you're not a doctor. How do you know? So I went to the school on the weekends. So that Monday I had an acupuncture appointment, and I was on the acupuncture table, and I remember her words. And all of a sudden, she's right. I don't have chronic fatigue syndrome anymore. She's right. And every cell in my body knew the truth of that. Every fiber in my being knew the truth of that. And that was my spiritual awakening,
Oh.
because that was like everything shifted in my life. That one moment on the acupuncture table,
So you suddenly felt better?
I
Like,
was suddenly better. I had 2 weeks of absolute bliss and amazing energy, and life was good, and life was miraculous, and everything was amazing. And then I had to get to work.
Right.
Meaning, I had to rewire my DNA. I had to reprogram myself. Everything I was taught growing up in a fundamentalist Christian family, I grew up Mennonite, everything I learned from that experience, I had to find my own truth. I had to know who I am.
Right.
Without the programming.
Were you so you were raised in a very religious household. Were you also very religious? Like, did you
I was.
So you believed in it too. It wasn't just like, because some people, they're raised a certain way, but they have their own.
I believed in it. I had my own personal connection with God, my own personal connection with Jesus Christ. I probably accepted Jesus Christ in my heart 3 times. Like when
okay, you're in.
Yeah. And there's a lot more to the story, from before that, but it's just a lot. So I'll give you that version. But the thing I want to highlight is what happened after that. That was December 13th, 2004. I'll never forget the day. I'll never forget the date. That's my spiritual birthday. It was 3 days before my actual birthday. So the synchronicity is like,
right.
But the real work happened after that. The facing my shadow, the getting real with myself. Who am I? What do I believe? What do I want out of life? What am I creating? And the really hard, difficult journey of going deep within myself, holding myself accountable, holding myself in integrity, not letting anything sabotage my spiritual path and my spiritual journey. So essentially, my life now is all about my mission.
Okay.
There's nothing in my life that's not aligned to my mission, because my mission comes first, and anything that's not in alignment falls away. And that's not easy to live that way.
No, it's not. I agree.
But it is fulfilling, and it's the only way for me now.
Okay. Well, let me ask you something. You have abilities. Can you share with us, like, would you call yourself psychic or intuitive? I know you channel dragon energies, different things. So tell me more about that, and when those abilities presented themselves, and in what way.
Okay. Whew, that's a lot. Okay. I don't call myself a psychic. I don't see the future. I don't predict the future. I do have some psychic abilities, but in my mind, there's a difference between having psychic abilities and being a psychic that, kind of predicts the future.
Sure. And honestly, I don't think anymore that anyone can actually predict the future. I think there's a lot of different potentialities. They can see potentialities, but things can change, and they have.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, for sure. My greatest gift, and the thing that makes it hardest to be here on this planet also, is my deep sensitivity.
Okay.
I am a very sensitive person. And that means that I process everything very deeply, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. Everything that I experience in this life it has substance to it. It has meaning.
Right.
Sometimes it has weight.
Would you say you're an empath?
Definitely 100%. Yeah. I couldn't make a course for empaths without being one myself.
Right.
There would be no integrity in that.
And I'm just gonna follow us on for this podcast. Just so you guys know, Susie, I mentioned at the beginning, has an empath to integration course. So, and you help people basically integrate their abilities, their empathic abilities, into everyday life.
Yeah, I help people integrate their sensitivities, their empathic abilities. I help activate people's spiritual gifts. Those who work with me on an ongoing basis, they activate their spiritual abilities and talents and gifts. There's a lot that I do, which was sort of what we were talking about before we hit the record button.
Yes.
There's a lot that I do that I can't even explain to you. And that is sometimes a frustration for me because as a businesswoman, it's not very good for marketing to not be able to explain myself. But there are subtleties and nuances in the energetic work that I do that aren't 3D, you know, they're not grounded on this planet in a way that is visible to everyone.
Right.
In fact, I would say not visible to really barely anyone. I've had a few people who come up to me and they get what I do and who I am, but it's few and far between. And so that makes it challenge. I'll be honest, that makes it challenging sometimes. You know, mostly I know who I am, and so it doesn't matter if other people see it or not. And then sometimes it's like, I really wish I could explain what it is that I do on a deep energetic level.
Well, tell me about the Way of Spiritual Mastery.
Yeah.
And what that show is about.
Yeah. That show is really about helping people understand the spiritual path, what it takes to be committed to the spiritual path, the things that we should understand about ourselves, about each other, about the path itself in order to be successful with it.
Right.
I've been doing this for 16 years. There's no way that I would still be doing this if I wasn't successful with it.
Right.
Right?
So when you say that you don't see into the future, but you're doing something energetically, you are connecting because you also have a show about the blue dragon. So you've channeled that. What is it that you're connecting with and in what way? Not just with the dragons, but with the divine. What is your connection? Like, do you hear voices? Do you see images? Do you just get an overall feeling? Like, what is your clair, I guess would be, or your clairs?
Yeah, I don't know what the word is, but I'm feeling. So
okay,
when I channel,
sentient, I think clairsentient is when you
okay.
Overall. Yeah, clairaudient is when you hear something.
Right.
And I forget the rest of them. There's a bunch of
me too. Yeah. Claircognizant is one of them. Yeah. I'm a feeler for sure. The main energy that I channel is actually Prime Creator. That's not on Awoken TV, but that's my main energy. And that is very much feeling. I feel the energy and then I find words to translate what I'm feeling. So it's not an exact science, but it is very potent and very powerful. With the blue dragons, it was a bit different. It was almost like they gave me words sometimes, not always, but I was almost sort of a medium for them instead of, and there's a distinction. Some people say there's a distinction between being a medium and a channel. Mm-hmm. With a medium, like the entity kind of comes into you or speaks through you, and as a channel, you're bringing the information through. You're not necessarily embodying an entity.
So which would you say you are of those two?
I would say I'm a channel.
Okay.
Yeah. But just to make a distinction with the blue dragons and Prime Creator, when I channeled the blue dragons, it was a little bit more specific. Like the messages that they brought forth for humanity it was very clear this is what they wanted to say. I don't know if that makes any sense, but
no, it does. Okay, I want to tell you, I want to share something with you. I don't know, I may have shared it with you before, and I hope you take this as it's meant, because when I first inherited Awoken TV and I was watching all this stuff, and then I come across your show with not way of spiritual mastery, but messages from the blue dragons in particular, I'm like, what the F? Like she's channeling dragons. Like, first of all, it was jumping the shark for me in that, like, okay, so this, one has to believe that people can channel, which I can go there, and then next one has to believe that there are such a thing as dragons and that you could channel them. And so I just remember being like, this is way out there.
Yeah.
But now I'm going to back up because we're talking about our different awakenings, right?
Yeah.
So I was going through some stuff. I was in the process of, like, getting Awoken TV and what was my next step. And I need signs, I need messages, like, universe, like, I don't know what I'm doing. What have I gotten myself into? And so this one morning I woke up and I was just laying in bed and I was awake. I was awake. And I suddenly saw like a blue light flash across the room, and I was like, "Oh, what's that?" And as I'm watching it, it starts off like an orb, an orb is almost looks like a snowflake, like, where you see like and then the orb materialized into a a fairy, which I know sounds crazy, especially coming from someone like me who doesn't
Not to
think
me.
psychic or what. I'm like, and then I'm like, am I really seeing that? Like, come on. And I'm like, that looks like a fairy, like a little blue fairy. It's a fairy. Okay. And then it disappeared. So I'm a very pragmatic person, like, so of course I'm like, well, maybe it was my imagination. I'm like, it wasn't my imagination. But I was like, okay. And so then I have a podcast that I listened to on Monday. It was a Monday morning, and it's called Magic Monday. And guess what the podcast was about?
Fairies?
Yes. And I have enough psychic friends and enough people in the community that say, like, when you have a vision, in order for the universe to make sure that they want to send you messages, and then they confirm, there's like a confirmation, especially with somebody like me. So the fact that the podcast was about fairies was my confirmation. Like, no, you're not just imagining things. And then it was all about fairies. I'm like, okay, that was a fairy. I saw a fairy. And then it confirmed it. And then I saw it one more time since. So what I will say is that me seeing a fairy, and also I love fairies. Like, I love the whole mythology of it and the whole, just that's kind of my vibe. And they're kind of an earth connection with the earth and the divine creature. So it makes sense for me to connect with that because I'm the feng shui lady and I'm all about, nature and having a relationship with our environment. And so fairies like people that love animals, that love the environment, so it makes sense that that's what would show up for me. But it was basically my gateway drug. I'm like, so if there's a realm where fairies exist, then I suppose there's a realm where dragons exist, and where all the, it all of a sudden opened this door to, like, well, if, so that was my
Why
gateway.
not?
But I will say, I remember being like, cuckoo for, like, what is this dragon stuff?
Yeah. What's interesting with the blue dragons is they probably for about a year before I agreed to bring them through, they would come and want me to bring through messages. And I was like, closed for business. I'm already channeling Prime Creator. Like, I've got enough going on, I need to be grounded to this planet too. I can't always be channeling stuff. And they would just every once in a while come back and, just check in. Hey, are you willing? Hey, are you ready?
So they're just kind of knocking on your door like, Susie, we're here. Can we talk to you? We have messages. We really want you to share this message. And you're like, come on, you guys.
Yeah, because as a channel, this is how I imagine it, that the beings out there know that I'm a channel. They see my light and they say, oh, she'll bring through a message for us. She has a clear voice. She can speak for us. And so all these beings, were knocking on my door, wanting me to bring through the messages. And I was like, dude, I got to do the human thing here. I can't be channeling 24/7.
Do you see the dragons in your mind's eye? Like, is it a blue dragon that you physically see this dragon?
No, I more feel their presence.
So how do you know it's a dragon?
They tell me.
So for all you know, it could be something else saying it's a dragon. What if it, how do you,
Yeah, so there's a vetting process,
okay.
which is why it took me so long to say yes.
Okay.
Um, yeah, there are beings that want to come through disguised as something else, and so you have
Mm-hmm.
to be really sure that you're bringing through the being that says that that's what they are.
Right.
Yeah.
Interesting. Because, this brings me to another topic about woo stuff and people who say that they channel. I sometimes wonder if, depending on who you are and what you're channeling, how aware people and how well they're able to vet what they're channeling, because there's a lot of people out there channeling
Yeah.
lots of different messages,
Yeah.
and trying to discern who's channeling something authentic, who's channeling something that's coming from a positive source or not.
Yeah.
So what is your vetting like, how do you vet? How do you be like, so dragon, I need to see some ID? You know what I mean? Like,
that's a good one. I should have said that. No, because I have such deeply developed feeling senses, I continue to feel their presence. Is this true? Is this authentic? Also, before I started channeling at all, I went through 9 years of making these affirmations, not even realizing at the time fully what I was doing. But I would say, and I had it written on sticky notes and put around my apartment, I am in a channel for love and light. I am a channel for the divine. I am a channel for the highest, purest frequencies. Like, I was already setting the boundary about what I would allow to come through me, not realizing that one day I would literally be bringing that kind of energy through me to bring messages to humanity. So it's not just that I bring through messages, but as this vessel, I have many years, a foundation of purifying myself, of transmuting those heavier, dense energies, of transmuting my shadows, so that what would be attracted to me was the highest frequency, not beings of lower frequency. Because there has to be a match, right? There has to be a match of who I am and what I bring through. And so if I'm, if I'm toxic,
you're gonna channel something toxic.
Yeah, and if I'm wounded as a person and I haven't healed myself, the match that I'm going to be for the frequencies that come through me are going to be heavier toxic energies.
Oh, well, you know what? Then that's very interesting, because I've had people claim that they were channeling a certain energy or even individual that's passed on, and the message that they gave me was so inaccurate, so inauthentic to what I was actually feeling.
Yeah.
That I was like, then I wondered, like, is she really channeling this person, or either A, she's making it up, which I don't think she was making it up. I think she genuinely believed she was channeling that. I just don't think she would make it her whole identity, just whatever. But she's channeling something. But the message was it was a way to manipulate something. So
yeah,
it's possible that she decided she was channeling that because she wanted to believe a certain something is true, or that she's just channeling an energy that's not so.
I will say that what I am saying here is a generalization.
Okay.
That I do believe grace is and can be involved in the process. Yeah, for example, when you set yourself, your ego, your filters aside, you can bring through a pure energy and not be pure yourself. Obviously, I'm not 100% pure,
Nobody is. I mean,
right. So there is a grace that happens in that process. But I also believe that there can be a lot more manipulated and influenced when the person isn't pure, because they're not able to see that they're being manipulated, or that they're bringing through energies that are manipulating something else.
So they could actually believe that what's coming through is authentic and
Yeah,
good, but because they're so distorted, they just
yeah,
don't have the discernment to know.
100%. And honestly, people have said that about me. So, like they say I'm bringing through a demon or whatever, and that's their perception. All I know is how I feel when I bring through Prime Creator, how I felt when I brought through the Blue Dragons. It was,
I mean, I have to
yeah, I
say,
can't even
channeling
explain
in
it.
general, as an audience or as somebody who entertains the concept of channeling, I think everyone has to use very discernment about what they're going to choose to like believe or not believe.
Yes.
It's being channeled, and only you can speak to what messages are coming through, but there's a lot of people channeling out there. I actually think it's an interesting topic for discussion regarding psychic ethics and all of that, um, and people doubling down on what they're channeling and whatnot. And it's just like it's really up to the people receiving the messages to discern if that
Yeah.
is that message for me.
Yeah. And I encourage that when I channel. I say, take this and receive it, or take this and throw it out. You discern, you decide what is true for you.
Right,
And
and I think sometimes it can come down to someone's track record. It's like, okay, this so and so, there's a lot of different people in the channeling world, and I guess their reputations are based on, oh, they've been channeling this information for a while, and they've been very accurate at this
yeah,
level, or
yeah,
not, you know.
yeah. I think that can be part of it too, for sure. It's pretty wild, because I have had some people come back and say, no, you're not actually channeling Prime Creator, you're channeling this or that or whatever. And, I guess that's what they see from it. I know the truth for me. So it is a very interesting thing. Like I said, it's not an exact science.
No, it's definitely open to interpretation. And there's a lot to, yeah, I think there's a lot of conversations that can be had around that. That's what I'll say, because I'm just seeing so many people. I'm channeling this and I'm channeling that, and what
Yeah.
these different people are channeling contradict. Well, one person's channeling, what another person's channeling, very different. I'm like, so who are you supposed to believe? And I have to return back to we all have a compass,
Yeah.
moral compass, an internal compass, our own intuition. And I think in this 2020, in particular, developing that discernment is probably the most important muscle we should all be working on.
Yeah. And to be fair, each person that channels has their filters as a human.
Sure.
So even though I put aside my ego, my understanding of things, still that's going to influence when I bring through a message. Because apparently I'm not the only one who channels Prime Creator. I've been told this. I don't know the other people. I don't, this was I just started doing it.
Sure.
But I'm sure that I bring through the Prime Creator energy different than somebody else would, because I have my own filters and belief systems. And of course that's going to influence some of the message. And so I always hope that when people receive the messages from Prime Creator that come through me, that they will take what feels most authentic and true to them.
Yeah, and also I think it's what people, sometimes it's not even just discernment. It's like what are people ready to hear, and sometimes they're ready to hear certain things at different times than others.
For sure. Yeah.
But to circle back to your awakening story,
Yes.
part of your awakening was developing these channeling abilities. When did that show up? And were you like, what the hell? What's this? Or were you inviting that? Were you trying to channel, or did it just?
I wasn't trying to channel. It was really kind of a cool experience, because at the time I had a client with a son who was failure to thrive. And my boyfriend and I at the time had gone to visit her and her son. And we sat with him, I don't know, for a couple hours. And she has this picture of us with this big orb that showed up in the room, like bigger than, you know, a human, like a huge orb that showed up in the room. It's an amazing photo. And we just sat with him, and I felt like I was telepathically communicating with him, and I felt like he was activating me and giving me downloads. And when we got back home several days later, my boyfriend at the time asked me a question, something like, why does everything feel so complete? And I started answering the question with all of this information that I didn't know anything about. And I was like, this is not my voice speaking through me. Who is this? What's going on? What is this? Who is this? And as soon as I asked the question, the answer came right away. It said Prime Creator.
And how old were you when this happened?
38.
Okay.
Yeah, a little over 5 years ago.
And before that, what other intuitive skills, like when did your first intuitive skills show up for you? And how long do you think you've been?
I mean, I think probably when I was a pediatric occupational therapist before my spiritual awakening, I was working with fragile children, and you know, there is a certain art form to that, knowing how to treat them and how to, you know, each one is different. And so you have to tune in and know how to work with the parents and the child. I've always been very sensitive. I've always been a deep feeler.
Right.
That knowing and those abilities have amplified as I've cleared out, you know, the density and transmuted the shadow.
Yeah.
But I've been that way my entire life.
It also seems like part of your, and I think this is very common for healers and light workers, is that we all have some sort of a physical obstacle, illness, chronic illness, a period of, you know, physical challenge that then leads to this, because we're then searching and trying to heal ourselves and whatnot. And then it's from there, I feel like for a lot of people, and in your case, it seemed to come from, you know, when you had the back issues and then went to the chiropractor and did all that stuff. So, it seems to stem from a physical challenge.
Yeah, because the reason for, in my belief system, the reason for that is when we're not aligned to our soul mission and our soul path, the energies try to show us what path to take, where to go. And if we don't get it energetically,
they literally knock us down.
Yeah, if we don't get it emotionally, then something has to happen physically for us to finally pay attention. The physical body is the 3D. That's the last place where the messages show up, because the messages are always there all around us, but most of us don't know how to listen and don't know how to interpret. So they're always there, but if we don't know how to listen and interpret, then something happens at a more tangible level to get our attention, to say, hey, pay attention here. Something needs to shift. And so I think that's why a lot of people who facilitate healing for others end up with physical issues, because they didn't hear them in the other forms.
Right. Right.
And they needed to change their path so they could start getting on their soul mission and their service path.
So I know that we have 3 shows that we want to promote for you. So if you were going to talk, and your course, if you were going to talk to everyone, to the audience directly, and just be like, this is what this show is about, this is what I'm bringing to you with this, that, like, maybe you can just give a synopsis of your 3 shows and course, and what your gift is to people, how you can be of service, and why they should want to check out each of the individual shows, because they all have different flavors for sure. And then of course your course.
Yeah. I'll start with the Way of Spiritual Mastery. That was kind of my first baby, if you will. Like I said, I've been on this path for 16 years. I know the nuances of this path. I know the depth and the breadth that this path can take. I know the struggles that this path can present. And so in the way of spiritual mastery, I'm handing you not a shortcut, because no one can go through a shortcut. Everyone has to go through their own journey.
Right.
But I'm handing you the tools and the skills that you'll want to develop to make your path successful and bring more ease to your path. You don't have to reinvent the wheel and learn everything from the ground up for yourself. I give that to you in the way of spiritual mastery. So it's sometimes maybe not an entertainment show,
Sure.
as much as maybe Sedona Woo and Taboo is, but it's going to give you what you need to be successful on the spiritual path, to thrive on the spiritual path. For me, this path has seen a lot of struggle, and you can lower your struggling
Right.
by learning some of these cool critical tools that I present in the way of spiritual mastery.
Wonderful. And then tell us a little bit then about messages from the Blue Dragon.
So the messages for the Blue Dragons really give us transmissions for humanity, hope for humanity, and also an understanding of what's been happening with humanity and what's going to happen. So I have to be honest with you. When I channel, I don't remember everything I bring through. So I can't remember everything about this show. There are 12 episodes.
Yes.
And the Blue Dragons show up in each and every one of them, and they bring through tones, and they bring through words, and they bring through inspiration. And
it's probably the most predictive show.
Okay.
Of the three. I think, the way of spiritual mastery is more of a tools, a show that give people tools as they're navigating this ascension.
Yeah.
Messages from the Blue Dragons is more about predictive overall world view from these.
Yeah, they're 11th and 12th dimensional beings. And so they have a perspective of our planet and of humanity that is a higher perspective. And it's refreshing because we get to see ourselves from the point of view of beings that have a wider range of understanding of what's happening.
Right. So that's, I think, a fun perspective. And then finally, Sedona Woo and Taboo.
Yes. Yeah, this show was really born because I find myself in these really amazing conversations with people behind closed doors. And it's stuff that, we don't see people talking about on TV. Maybe it's like that juicy podcast you were mentioning where people are real and raw and authentic. And I wanted to bring something where we're talking about things on the spiritual path that not many of us, but some of us are privy to. And I wanted to bring it to everyone. Things like Tantra.
Yeah, that was a great episode.
That's one of those.
Was that a two-parter?
That was one part.
One part. Okay. Yeah.
Conspiracy theory.
Yep.
What is it? Why are we so condemned? That was a two-parter.
Yes, it was.
Recently, I did one on sex trafficking, and that one I wanted to bring into. That was another two-part episode. I wanted to bring that because it's something very real that's happening, and it's edgy. It's not something that we see on the mainstream news. It's not something that
people
talk about.
They're not talking about it as much as they should be, or they're not talking about it in
a real way.
Yeah. I actually, one of my favorite ones, you did one on ayahuasca, which I thought was interesting, because a lot of people frivolously go and do stuff like that, but I think it's a reality check on, like, that's not to be played with. It is a medicinal experience, it is plant medicine, but that's not an easy path, and people, so I just thought, like, it was interesting to see both sides of it, and what the benefits are, obviously, of going on that journey, but that it's it is a spiritual thing. It's not just about getting high. You know what I mean? Um,
Definitely.
yeah.
Yeah, I really wanted to bring topics that would be helpful, but also really interesting to people.
Yeah. I mean, and to summarize, like all four of those topics, very, some controversial, some, but all thought provoking and conversation in an interview format that I think you really have done a wonderful job with. And it's exciting to see you in all the different formats, and all three shows are so unique. And then the course itself is also unique. So, I think that you guys, if you're new to Awoken TV, please check out Susie Beiler. Check out each of her shows, Sedona Wound Taboo, Way of Spiritual Mastery, Messages from the Blue Dragons. And of course, if you're an empath who wants to help, you know.
Yeah, and I would say this is on the empath to integration course is
Yeah.
good for people who aren't empaths, who aren't sensitive to watch as well, because it
Oh,
will give you an understanding. If you have someone like that in your life, it will help you understand them and what they go through on a daily basis.
yes.
So it's important for us to educate. It's important for those of us who aren't sensitive to get the perspective and point of view from someone who is, so that you know what we go through and so that you can be supportive. Because the thing is, this is my soapbox. The thing is, those of us who are sensitive and empathic, we need a lot of support.
Yeah.
And we don't always know how to ask for it because we don't always know exactly what kind of support we need. That's a skill I've had to develop, to learn how to ask for support, to learn how to ask for the kind of support that I needed. That's a skill as an empath that you need to have. And there is a section in the course on asking for support and getting support. So I want everyone to watch that course and go through that course. It's not just for us sensitive ones. It's not just for the empaths. It's for everyone, because those who aren't empathic, we all are to a degree, but those who
Yeah.
aren't deeply sensitive,
You probably know someone that is.
you know someone that is, even if they don't know it themselves, you know someone that is, and it will help you understand them and support them.
And that course is included with subscription on Awoken TV. You can find it in our Mystery School tab if you've got the app, or on your TV under the Mystery School section. And then her shows, all three of them, are under Original Series. So please check Susie Beiler out on Awoken TV. Thank you so much, Susie. It's been such a pleasure. I'm
Thank
grateful.
you, Laura.
And thank you for being part of episode 2 of the Awoken podcast. You can find us on www.awoken.tv if you want to subscribe. For 7 days are free. And you can support our community of lightworkers, conscious filmmakers, and be part of our journey. Blessings.
Thank you.
Thank you.